So what comes to your mind when you hear the word overhead? Now, I'm guessing you probably have an involuntary, somewhat negative reaction, right? Well, why is that? Well, we've got a great topic for you today, and it is really important, and it's called the overhead myth. And we're going to unpack why overhead spending actually matters for nonprofits. Now, if you're thinking, overhead, yawn, well, trust me, stick around because this topic could completely change the way that you look at charities and the work they do. Hi, this is Greg McRae, and welcome back to our 501c3 University channel, where we strive to make nonprofit issues understandable, and with today's topic, maybe a little bit paradigm shifting. Now, it's been a little longer than usual since we were in the studio, so it's great to be back with new content. We'd love it if you hit that subscribe button and the like button if you haven't already. We've got a lot of good stuff planned for 2025, and you don't want to miss out. So what is the overhead myth? Now let's start with the basics. The overhead myth is the widespread belief that charities and nonprofits, they should run on as little administrative and fundraising cost as possible, often measured as their overhead. Now for years, people have been told that the best nonprofits are the ones that report, say, 90% of every dollar going to programs. And while that might sound good in theory, the truth is that it oversimplifies the work that nonprofits do. Things like salaries, staff training, technology, and even marketing get lumped under overhead. But guess what? Those expenses keep the organization functioning effectively, and without them, nonprofits can't do their best work. There's some history to all of this, so let's talk about that for a minute. The idea of keeping overhead super low has been around for decades. Ratings organizations like Charity Navigator used to emphasize overhead percentages as a gauge to how efficient a nonprofit was. And because donors often look at these ratings, nonprofits felt pressure to report tiny overhead costs or risk losing funding. But over time, people began to realize, wait, this may not be the best way to measure impact. Well, in 2013, several big watchdog groups, actually some of the very same organizations that help perpetuate the myth if we're telling the truth. Anyway, Charity Navigator, the BBB Wise Giving Alliance, and GuideStar all released a letter calling for an end to our obsession with overhead. Now, this was a huge turning point. It told donors, look, you can't just look at overhead percentages to decide if a nonprofit is worth supporting. The good news is it was an important watershed moment that really started changing the narrative in the right direction. So let's talk about why overhead spending isn't just okay, it can be super important. Now think about any successful business. They have to pay decent salaries to attract good talent, invest in professional development, keep their tech up to date, and run marketing campaigns. These are all overhead costs. And guess what? It helps them grow. The same is true for nonprofits. If they're forced to slash overhead too far, they might end up with underpaid, overworked staff who eventually burn out, outdated technology that slows everything down, bare bones marketing that doesn't attract new donors or participants. And that is no way to create positive change in the world, right? You might have heard of Dan Pallotta. Now, he's the guy behind the TED Talk, The Way We Think About Charity is Dead Wrong. He famously said, we have a belief system that insists that nonprofits be desperately afraid of investing in their own growth. Now, let that sink in for a moment. How can a nonprofit grow and help more people if it's scared to spend on growth? Pallotta's big point is that we don't give nonprofits the same freedom to invest and innovate that we give to for-profit companies, and that limitation can keep them from scaling up their impact. So where are we now? Well, charities and rating groups have finally started to shift their approach. Instead of just looking at overhead numbers, they're focusing more on impact. How many lives are being changed or improved? Sustainability. Can the nonprofit keep growing strong for years to come? Transparency. Are they open about where the money goes? Donors, foundations, and the general public are learning that a super low overhead doesn't necessarily equal a good nonprofit. In fact, it could signal that the organization is skimping on the basics it needs to flourish. So you might be asking, are you saying that we should embrace overhead? Well, pretty much yes. Look at it from a smart donor's perspective. If you're a donor, you want a nonprofit to have a healthy overhead budget. You know that they need quality staff and less turnover. Better technology and infrastructure, updated systems, software, and training, that's going to help a nonprofit reach more people and measure impact accurately. They need effective fundraising and marketing. They got to spread the word, and nonprofits need to invest in communications. If no one knows about your mission, you can't grow. And finally, professional development. Training staff means better services for the people or causes the nonprofit supports. Ultimately, a nonprofit's overhead isn't wasted. It's what enables everything else to run smoothly and scale up over time. Now, if you work at a nonprofit or you're on its board, you might be thinking, but donors are still asking about overhead. And you're right, they do, and it's still an issue. There's still a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation in the marketplace. Unfortunately, there's a lingering, not so great legacy to all that former talk about overhead ratios. You've got to communicate why these expenses matter. Be transparent. Show them how an investment in staff, training, tech leads to bigger impact down the road. And if you're a donor or volunteer, ask the nonprofits you support how they use your contributions overall, not just how low the overhead is. You might be pleasantly surprised by the long-term benefits of overhead investment. The overhead myth has stuck around for a long time, but it is slowly losing its grip. We're realizing that overhead is just a piece of the puzzle and often a necessary investment in real-world impact. If you're a donor, don't be afraid when a nonprofit shows a healthy administrative budget. Ask yourself, are they using it wisely to create lasting change? And if you're a nonprofit, own your overhead story. Show donors and supporters exactly how that overhead spending supercharges your programs. When we all understand that overhead is part of building sustainable change, everyone wins, especially the communities these organizations serve. Well, that's it for today. We hope this topic has helped you and gotten you to thinking a little bit differently about your budget. As always, we appreciate the likes and subscribes. Thanks for watching. Now go serve your community.